Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's so nice to see all of you. I'm the host for tonight's reading, an open mic featuring Allan Weiss and myself. This event is funded by the Writers Union of Canada. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in these territories. We would like to express gratitude to and honor the people who have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. It's important to understand the longstanding history that brought us to reside on the land and to seek to understand our role within that history. Please showing your support to 1492 Land Back Lane Legal Defense Fund, the Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan Land Defenders, the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, and more. I'm excited to present our first open mic reader this evening. Welcome, Ivy. Ivy Reese.
Hi, thank you, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me properly? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I forgot my external microphone, and I'm having the internet's being a bit touchy. Okay, so first off, let me just grab my book here. I'd like to just introduce Author Fest for those of you who haven't heard about it. I see we have Paul Edward Costa here, and he knows a lot about it, and he will be knowing a lot more about it in the next 24 hours. It's been a crazy 10 months. This is a game-changing event for the publishing and book and author industry. It's basically about bringing celebrity flair to authors and showing that authors can be influencers, because we are influencers, and it's just the fact that people are paying attention, people like Kim Kardashian. And we are Canadian authors recognized in Australia, New Zealand, across the world. And Canadian talent here they don't really, like, people who love to read don't know we have the best talent in this country. We had a press conference on Thursday, July 7th. It was huge. It's airing currently on Caribbean Showtime TV. I was also throughout this week, through Monday through Friday, which can be accessed 24/7 on IPTV, which is that TV box. It also airs on Global, Peterborough, Bell 5, Bell Cable, and Rogers. And all those call numbers on the Facebook internet for Artiste Mag 905. I will put all of that information in the chat and send it out to you during the course of the program. And I just simply want to say we have Ann Tate on board, who many of you might know her as, she's one of the top international award-winning authors in Canada as a casting director, producer, screenwriter. You would know her from being the lady who cast all 7 seasons of Road to Avonlea and both the Anne of Green Gables series. So she was, of course, at the press conference. She's just one example of the kind of celebrity flair we're bringing to this event at the historic Parkdale Hall. There's going to be a red carpet. It's fully catered. The menu was to die for. People were blown away. I haven't had, because of the Rogers thing on Friday, I haven't had the, I'm behind on emails. And I mean, the menu is beautiful. And we had samples of the menu there for the private press conference event. And we had key readers like Alan Breezemaster, Ann Tate, a number of other individuals, and Jeff Cottrell, and talking about important topics that affect literature today. And that press conference will be available to you within the next 24 hours. I would encourage you to visit theartistemagazine.com. I will have it on the brand new landing page, and it will be on the Facebook probably even before that. But that landing page will be live tomorrow, and you can watch the 27-minute edited version to get an idea of why the different topics we addressed and why this event is important, which not only features 22 performing authors, has a number of keynote speakers, and by popular demand, the Publishing Perspectives panel. And then because I've had a lot of emerging authors come to me over the last 10 months. So I've opened it up, and we now have a highlight author section. And what's really nice about it is the authors have 8-foot tables. So we're teaming up emerging, like an established author will be sharing a table with a non-performing author. Not all of the non-performing authors are emerging, for the record. And that being said, this is a networking event like there's never been. We're expecting an audience of 350 people, and the date is August 6th, Saturday, August 6th at Parkdale Hall. The venue is absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot on the Instagram as well, and I don't want to take up more of your time. But I think if you visit the website and the Facebook, you will get a chance to see what it's about. And I will be reaching out to finalizing the few performing authors in this week. It's been just such a breakneck pace. So, and Jennifer Hosein will be there as one of the guests. Okay, I'll read a cute little one. I think this kind of relates to the land opening as well. It's only five lines. And then I'll read this other one, which I've only read in public a couple times. I read this recently when I was in Kingston, and it went over really well. It's called Birds. In every part of the world, all the different birds speak the same language. Despite the country that they are in, they speak as one. So that's that. And I should say I'm reading from my collection, There Is a Place, which launched December 29th, 2020, in a studio launch. Jennifer Hosein was one of the people who participated live. It was amazing. We did a micro drama, and she also read some of my poems. Okay, Happiness. That's the name of this poem. Happiness is to breathe deep the sea breeze, to feel the winter wind in the middle of a park, to feel the hot sun soak into your skin after the dark. In knowing freedom in the way that comes after having been trapped, in knowing the joy of living after having nearly died. Feeling freedom without fear, without needing to hide. The grounding ease of being able to fully breathe. Happiness resides in the sun that shines, the delicious swallow of sweet wine, in the hustle and bustle of New York City, in love and in camaraderie, in the silence of solo individuality. So that one's that. And I'll do one more short one. Shall we stay with the happy theme? If anyone has something to say, please unmute yourselves. I'm so used to using broadcast stuff. I don't do the Zoom unless I'm just kind of attending.
Happy.
Happy, okay. All right. All right. All right, then. I don't have that many happy poems, but maybe I shouldn't have asked. All right, give me 2 more seconds. I know it's the most, trust me, I know how annoying it is. You know, well, whatever. We'll go with this one. It might be happy. It's subjective, like all art should be. It's called Feather Red or Feathered. Obviously, it spells the same as one word. I sent him off without a kiss. I sent him off with a feather of red, a bottle, and a crimson cinnamon candle. I bid him to collect water from the river Tiber and sands from the Ionian Sea, to seal the bottle with wax sanguine and bring it back to me. Without a kiss, it felt as if we had not said goodbye. So I sent a feather instead, a heart emblazed bottle, and a candle. For without goodbye, this parting is not forever. And with that, I'll just add that I often, if I do say anything about the collection, well, it's technically 10 years, more than 10 years, but it's from 1996 to 2011. So, but there's only a few poems from before 2000, so, you know, whatever. So it's basically 10 years of poetry, and with a couple of about 4 or 5, I think, snuck in near the end. This is one of them, like during the editing process, the one you just heard. But I like to call the collection autobiographical because everything in here really did happen. There's one poem that's a dream. That was a dream. That's about as far as we go from reality in this thing. But Each section, and I'll just let you guys know, you can order the book for $20, of course, but has an original photograph. That's, of course, a deer entering the liminal space. And first section is about going into the downfall, second is within, and the third section is coming out of the downfall. And the poem I just read was in the second section. And that heart and blazed bottle, which was photographed by the River Tiber in Italy, almost was the picture for that second section. But on a resolution level, we went with another photo. So that kind of shows you moving into the thorns, but I don't think it renders quite nicely on, you can't see the depth of the image over Zoom. So thank you so much, Jennifer and Alan. And Alan, we've got to catch up. And I will, now that I'm done reading, I'll keep monitoring for the Zoom bombers.
Thanks. Thank you, Ivy. That was great. I love that the birds, they speak as one. You know, I wish we could speak as one.
Yeah, I mean,
we're so divided.
Exactly.
It's sad. Thank you. And yes, so Ivy's the Canlit Festival, Saturday, August 6th at Parkdale Hall. I'm very excited to go. Maybe you guys should look into it. You can check it out on her website, theartist.com, or Facebook or Instagram. Thank you, Ivy.
Now, the Artist Magazine.
Theartistmagazine.com, sorry. Thank you. John Otten, welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. John, welcome. John Otten is going to read some work for us.
Okay, well, I'm just going to read two poems. I don't know if they're exactly happy or sad. I think both have elements of comedy, and they both deal with pop culture and modern media in one way or another. The first one, people of a certain age will recognize the title, which is Coyote and Roadrunner, Acme of Fate. And this is a poem about the existential implications of the great Chuck Jones series, in which Coyote is always trying to capture Roadrunner and never succeeding, which seems to me a pretty good metaphor for life, right? So here we go. Coyote and Roadrunner, Acme of Fate. Poor Coyote, the world turns trickster, reverses gravity, drops him up canyons, blows him through cliffs. So often he's left with only desire burning and a charred face. Desperate artificer, every more complex trap spring him into the infinite, stalled in thin air, the prize ever unwon. Roadrunner evading, beep, 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 Beatrice with a falling angel's speed races on, runs painted backdrops into real roads, and dogged Dante still aches for that third line to seal everything up. It's like waking to learn everything you aimed and wound up springs back at you. Your own worst terrorist, the executioner's hand measuring himself, while Roadrunner sails the sky, never to reappear, goes to minuendo. And the second one, it's called Mixed Marital Arts. That's not a typo. I'm playing around, as you'll see. And this was inspired by sitting in a bar. And you know, in most bars, you don't get to choose what's on the TV. Well, I was sitting there enjoying my drink in a cool afternoon, and they had mixed martial arts up there, which is rather a bizarre sport if any of you watched these. Two guys basically beating the crap out of each other with very few rules. So mixed marital arts. Head resting on his partner's bladed chest, they reach for each other, thighs interlocked, and flinch. Love hurts, can't stop scoring points. Readying for the air kiss, the other spins a kick. Slow-mo shock waves, faces bulging. Pain is power. Stem the bleeding, ice stiff necks, offer tactics inside the gold ring. Call for Punch and Judy. Lips split, noses puff in the clinch, close enough for lovers. After the ritual, embrace. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's great. I love the world turns trickster and mixed marital arts. That is a great title. The pain is power. Wow. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to begin our two features. And Alan, will you introduce the first feature?
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you, John, for those lovely images of marital bliss. Jennifer Hosein is a Montreal-born writer, visual artist, and educator of Trinidadian and South Asian ancestry, residing in Toronto. Her debut collection of poetry, A Map of Rain Days, was longlisted for the 2021 Pat Lowther Memorial Award. Her poems, short fiction, creative nonfiction, and a play have been published in The Fiddlehead, The Quarantine Review, Event, Rubicon, Makara, as well as translated into Hungarian for the anthology Crystal Garden, Kristali Kert. I should know how to pronounce that better than I do. Sorry. Her artwork. Okay. Her artwork has appeared on book covers, magazines, and in solo and group exhibitions in Toronto. It is also featured on the cover of A Map of Rain Days, and she'll be showing you that. Her website is www.jenniferhosein.ca. Jennifer, looking forward to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. So I'm going to share a video of my artwork while I read, and the paintings and drawings are intrinsically connected to my writing. I'll read poems from my book, A Map of Rain Days, and creative nonfiction from my manuscript in progress. I've chosen to read poems, prose, and artwork related to love and loss and to issues facing women and people of color in these times. I should warn you that some of my work contains scenes of violence. I'm going to share the screen. Just give me a second here. Oh, it's weird. 1 second. Oh, here, just. All right.
Well, while you're doing that, I can say, you know, one of the last things Jennifer and I performed together was the poem you had mentioned, Alan, and then I did the Hungarian version, and we did it at Transac.
That was fun.
Right before COVID. Yeah, I think it was February 2020.
Yeah,
it's one of the last live events. Yeah, and it worked out really well.
I've never had any read my poems in Hungarian out loud, so that was cool. Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay, can you guys see my image? Shared screen? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna start. So the first poem is the title poem of my book, A Map of Rain Days. And here's the book again. I am bent by the way that these things go, put my face in my hands and pull the skin taut across miles and miles. Walk down the corridors in my mother's bruised shoes. My mother's toes are crooked and curled in a misguided arthritic map of rain days. After my mother had a stroke, she became like a child. The next poem is Heart. My mother's heart begins to drift away, but we are selfish and tell her to let them fix it, and we pace and pace the days. Don't tell her it's a poor sign, aortic valves open and close, that keeps her herself until she is not herself. Voice crooked, face fallen, buttons askew, and pants half on the floor. I cannot begin. Beloved mother is a clipped-winged bird that floats around in lace-edged nightgowns, soft, soft skin like a schoolgirl's, shooing away the cats and always packing her clothes to go home. The next poem is Breath. Our breath sits heavy on the dashboard. Mother floats around the car with the snow. Our boots crunch and slide across new graves, and Uncle says, "She's here. No, she is here," blowing his vodka breath into the sky. A few days after my mother passed away, my daughter moved to Los Angeles. Then she got married. This poem is Wedding Day for Natasha. You are the princess beneath my pillow. I am the pea that sways in the corners of your night. You are my map of the city, Every place is only meaningful in the way that you were there with me. This is the airport that you are leaving me from. This is the road that takes me away from you. When you leave, you take the light away. I wait for your whisper. Hold tight to the pillow that you laid your head upon, as if it were love itself. Pull stitches out of your discarded dresses, unraveling the years between us. Then I begin to sew your wedding dress. Tree lights string me across the desert, my feet parched with longing. Across the universe in a sun-bleached room, I lay the snow white dress on the bed. Today is your wedding day. You tug at the hem of your dress, dip your white heels into the grass. In the Hollywood afternoon, you are breathtakingly happy. In the morning, I have to return to my life without you. I press my tears to the door of your hotel room to feel your breath. When I look for you in mirrors, you shine behind my eyes. Sometimes you whisper to me to wrap you tight in the star-punched night. My aunt and uncle moved to Sudbury a few years back. This poem is Exile, Canadian Shield. In the city, I cannot stop. In the Canadian Shield, there is stillness, windows and sky. Auntie cannot bear to live in this faraway place, while uncle is thinning out of the living world. They hide in the basement as if they are hidden rock and snow. Auntie moved into my bedroom when I was 2. She slipped the fear out of the night when she entered the room. On her wedding day, I danced in the front yard, drunk on cheap something, stomping snow, marveling at the moon and the whoosh in my head. I see their footprints getting smaller in snow, but it is summer and the rain has birthed a fog of mosquitoes. The next poem is Widow. I did not want a husband. I wanted a tree, a forest, a black-winged crow, black night and blue earth, bed of rocks. I wanted an ancient man boy, salt-eyed and ragged. I wanted fingertips for eyes. But now I am old, a faithless widow, soft boys filling the spaces that rain cannot. This next poem is When the River Meets. When the river meets the haggard years with starlit dawn and broken mandibles, ribs snapped like toothpicks beneath the fractured moonlight. The body repairs despite the nights unfolding like caricatures. A sleight of hand like a moonbeam or a wooden beam. His hands on me in ways. A slip of the tongue fractures the day, collapses my face, and other men against the floor, again the floor. Fists. I carry around anger and resistance in the palms of my hand. I said. He pried open my fists, finger by finger. He moved in, knocking down all opposition. The palms of my hands, he saw, were empty. Behind his eyes, the hangman raged, pushed my fingers backward until I thought I was fingerless, hoofed like a horse. He began to retreat, sickened by the coolness that surrounded me. He dragged me through 100 houses, 1,000 streets, across an ocean and a sea. I tried to remember love and the sky before it rained. I love you. I love you, he said. You are my heart. I'll cut your tongue out so you can't speak like that anymore. I'll cut your feet off and I'll carry you around when I want. I'll cut your hands off so you can't touch another man's face the way you touch mine. Will you cut my cunt out, she asked, so I can't fuck another man or even myself? I'll cut it out and I'll keep it in a locked drawer. I'll take it out when I need to and place it in the space between your legs. Or maybe, if I'm angry, I'll take it into another room, put it around my cock and thrash around some. I'll cut your breasts off so no man can look at them. Then you can wear what you like. What will you leave me, she asked. I'll leave you my right hand to hold when you're alone, and I'll leave you my heart. Next poem is History. Look at me on his bed. History will not untie me. His story, always his story, someone's his story. His cock like a beacon, a game of sticks. I tire of the ins and outs of me, my beauty laid flat on the bed for his story to unwind the night, the morning, the clothes from my back. I am just undressed, no lace, no red, no perfume, just my skin is me. (1977). 1. Blend into trees and sky in brown skin. Stay tight to tree bark. Hold your breath between the crisp steps of teenagers slipping past in a cloud. Shed the cloak of trees, veer towards home where your thick socks shuffle on the parquet floor. 2. School is black terror, so you walk into books like Alice, blue jeans and tight skin, hallucinogens and hatred spun in webs through the hallowed halls. 3. You walk a thin gauntlet alone. So that's it for the poetry. I'm going to read 3 pieces of creative nonfiction. The first is 15. 15-year-old's bones scattered on the riverbed, the skull, the joggers, the urban myths. And sheen, ache trees and the crunch underfoot. At night, the spaces are vast and lonely. There's music and sometimes the strangled screams of women. From the window, you see nothing but your own reflection pasted over the long black fields. If you cry out for help on the street, cars pass you by. If you are dragged into the woods beside the road, no one stops. Trees are splendid, luminous beings stretching their arms to the sky. I am 15, in the land of strip malls and basement parties. There is only shopping and shoplifting, tripping out in the girls' washrooms. At lunch, I sit with the brown girls in a corner of the cafeteria. Away from their shelter, I run the gauntlet between the kids in the halls, on sidewalks, on buses. I am laughed at, spat on, shoved. When I go to see about a job, there's a man on the 54A bus. I am a lonely girl. The colors are black and blue, the black of his hands over my eyes, of the floor, a sliver of blue sky. I look for love with one of any of the men I meet. In their dusty apartments, I sit at secondhand Formica tables that smell of Ajax and old toast. The Spanish painter speaks to me in French that rolls off his tongue like sugar beignets. The flower seller lives beside the streetcar tracks. On my way to visit them, I imagine the other lives that await me. I ride the subway home smelling of aftershave and sex. Head shops, massage parlors, strip clubs, pimps in platform shoes. Marjorie takes me to the Young Street Strip on my sweet 16th, introduces me to her friends, 14-year-olds whose pimps ply me with compliments. Pretty lady, what's your name? What's your game? Little girl, don't be shy. Don't walk away. We ordered clam chowder and French fries. And look down on the strip. Neon lights and Sam the Record Man, cheap blowjobs and nickel bags. You can't get into the strip club across the street if you aren't 18, but you can suck a John's dick for $20 if you are 12. The next piece is a safe house. Everyone needs a safe house. There are fleeting thoughts, fists and fingernails, black and blue. 4-year-old's toes slipping out from beneath the blue Mexican blanket, sleeping angel's face and just washed spun silk hair. These are the things that stay. How many times did she wait in the next room, suspended in the thin comfort of her tiny dolls? All the things I took her through. My mother used to say, I'll give you something to cry about. Sometimes I peer into the windows of the places we lived in then, wondering at the lives that are lived there now. When I was a child, stairs led from our narrow dining room to a cavernous cellar. It was black and damp, and my father killed a rat there, buried it in the backyard beneath my bedroom window. Every night I waited for my aunt to come to bed and turn her face to the wall on the other side of the room. Only then was I safe. I have never liked to sleep alone, often making the mistake of settling on someone to help pass the nights. My mother said I carried too much anger with me. That was the reason I failed with men. She did not ask why I was angry or if the men were angry, but it's okay for men, isn't it? No one wants to hear why I stayed. I didn't. I left and he followed, pounded on my door, followed me on the street until I tired of being afraid of the shadows and let him back in. The devil, you know. They thought I was weak, but I was never. Tonight, someone is banging on a wall, blows that run through concrete and steel all the way up to the 20th floor where I am taut, poised to run. My bones drift towards breaking, but this time there are no bruises to hide beneath shirt sleeves, no fictions to tell about bathtubs and door jams. This time there's a safe house and a good man. I'm going to finish with a piece that was published this year in the Fiddlehead called Fabric. 1968. My mother's antique Singer sewing machine pedals through the evenings, crinolines and corduroy. The fabric of me is woven then. Weekends, my father dons the suits that spill out of his industrial faff and drives us across the Jacques Cartier Bridge in his 1964 Peugeot. Players' cigarettes dangling from the driver's window, kids skirmishing in the back seat. 1970. In New Bell Bottoms, we trouble the summer afternoons. Our feet ping and clack on the railroad ties. We are fearless away from our mother's watchful eyes, haranguing the streets at dusk. I trail behind the boys from the Catholic school. The new boy next door, third floor flat, defines me with a name, savoring the word on his tongue, so you know that he learned it from his father. I linger at the bottom of our street until the sounds of dinner blanket the dusk, doors slamming, fathers howling, the slap of a leather belt against a boy's sweat-laced skin. I beg my mother to cut off the cumbersome length of my hair. She uses sewing shears and keeps the glossy length of braid in her top dresser drawer, next to her 22-karat Indian gold earrings. My mother always has a place to put her ancestry. I do not know where to find mine. 1971, when my grandmother arrives at the end of summer, swathed in gauzy white cotton like a gift, 4 Trinidad expat families travel en masse to see the famous Niagara Falls for the first time. Posing by the retaining walls in our best clothes, pastel hues and paisley patterns, mini dresses and bell bottoms, I hide at the edge of the camera lens, far from my grandmother, who, in her uncommon clothes and orning, ransacks my efforts at assimilation. 1972. I am no part of their Quebec when my father joins the Anglo exodus. But as soon as the Scarborough children spit me out, I look for myself. In fleur-de-lis, I draw on notebooks in the French that still clings to my tongue. 1976. I keep my head down and beg my mother, but still she kneads and rolls, the sense of Saturday curries folding into my skin. On the bus, every day of the week, they hold their noses, though I cannot smell what they see. I learned to loathe the food that courses through my blood, the language my parents have forgotten how to speak, the skin that defines me. I cloak my skin with clothes I sew from pictures cut out of magazines. Just my skinny foot on the black cast iron treadle of the Singer sewing machine, but they call me Packy. I relinquish food and swim hollow-eyed through the halls of the high schools. I weigh 81 pounds. 1993, There is a man that tries to tell me what to wear. He tuts my bare midriff, compels me with twists of my skin. But I'm descended from a long line of midriff bearers. My mother wore saris for special occasions, unfolding a flicker of brown midriff when she shifted in her chair, a golden shimmer of skin in the light from a television. Did she know how she dazzled? 2021. Still, I hide. Summer and the pandemic brings us out onto balconies. My neighbor slams his balcony door against the quick toxic smell I spray on a canvas. I apologize to the afternoon and to anyone who can hear, to the wasps that loiter on the pepper plant, then later to the night. I eschew the balcony, lower the volume of whatever I can think to, take cover in the familiar gloom of the living room. I am without the threads of history, unbound, and when the wind picks up with little to anchor me, I am blown along the streets like a tattered piece of cloth. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to take a short break. Is 5 minutes okay? Oh, thank you.
That was wonderful, Jennifer. Thank you so much for that. The striking images and the themes of violence, of race, of family, and of course the motif of hearts.
Thank you, Alan.
Just wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I
Take
think
5 or 10 minutes.
let's take 5, and it'll probably
Okay.
maybe stretch a little bit.
So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for all the wonderful chat comments. I really appreciate that. And I'm so excited to present our next feature, Allan Weiss. Allan Weiss. Allan Weiss is a Toronto fiction writer and professor of English and Humanities at York University. He's the author of 3 story cycles, Living Room, 2001, Making the Rounds, 2016, and most recently, Telescope, 2019. Other short stories, both realist and fantastic, have appeared in various anthologies and magazines, including Wascana Review, On Spec, and the Tesseract's anthology series. His next story, A Tartan of Many Colors, will appear soon in the anthology Other Covenants, Alternate Histories of the Jewish Peoples. And all right, welcome, Allan.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to thank the Writers Union and the Canada Council for funding this, and also to Jennifer. I'd like to thank her in particular for organizing this evening's event. I'm going to read the openings of a couple of stories, one realist and one fantastic, as I promised earlier. The realist story is another story about Lawrence Title, my running character in 2 of my books, Living Room and Telescope. And what I've done in the chat is put the link to where you can purchase a copy of Telescope. This is some years later than the previous 2 books are set. He's now dealing with some other kinds of issues. And so what I'm going to do is start by reading Street Jewelry and just the opening paragraphs of it so that you get a sense of the story. I'm currently shopping it around. Again, the title is Street Jewelry. After Dad had his first heart attack, I drove into Montreal as soon as I could get away, partly to help him and partly to tell him off. He'd ignored my warnings, laughed off my offers of guidance, even though he knew that I knew what I was talking about. By the time I arrived, he'd already been moved from the Jewish General's ER to a semi-private room in the cardio ward. My mother was sitting in the lone high-back chair reading People. As soon as she saw me, she threw the magazine onto the overbed table, knocking over the unopened plastic cup of apple juice, and stood up awkwardly to hug me. Her hair, the deep brown she favored now, was stiff with spray. "Oi, do you believe it?" she asked, looking more angry than sad. I'd seen that expression 1,000 times, usually directed at me. Yes, I said. Dad merely watched me, saying nothing. Tubes fed oxygen directly into his nostril. His remaining hair was lying in sparse, rampant curls on the pillowcase, and his hands were folded outside his blanket, resting on his mounded belly. The heart monitor maintained its rhythmic beep. I wouldn't have been able to stand listening to that record of my danger all day. I found him downstairs, my mother continued. She was still wearing her gray wool coat as if she'd just arrived, though I knew she'd been there all day. I heard a yell, ow, and a noise that wasn't good. I went down to see what was what and found him. He was on the floor. He was sweating like crazy and gray. He looked, and he threw up. What time? I was still looking at Dad, who remained silent. After 9, too late. I shook my head. That late. I had things to finish, Dad said at last in a dry voice. It's tax season. I reached for the apple juice and peeled off the foil, then held it out to him. He shook his head. What am I going to do with him? I asked. I told him it's enough, but he doesn't listen. I know. Driving around everywhere, picking up papers when the clients couldn't come to the house, eating out all the time, and only the worst things, fatty smoked meat, pizza slices, but Diet Cokes, so he'd feel virtuous. I tried to suppress it, but I couldn't. You worked hard for this, Dad. You spent years working toward it. He spent whole days down in his office dealing with the same clients he'd had for decades. They'd been old when I was a kid, or so it seemed, and most spoke Hungarian or English with thick accents. By now, they had to be in their 70s or more. Dad would get dressed in his suit and tie, and shirts with French cuffs, long after the rest of us switched to buttons to maintain a professional image, and head into the basement for the whole day, emerging only to eat and watch TV occasionally. He came to love the original Antiques Roadshow when it was on CBC News World on Sunday afternoons, when I was home to visit and it wasn't hockey season, as we would watch restrained British men and women barely react when they were told their heirlooms were worth thousands of pounds. How wonderful, they'd comment with a little smile, and sometimes we'd look at each other
And we're losing.
as if to say, that's it. We wanted delight. An explosion of joy, but that wasn't the British way. Porcelain, silver tankards, Asian bowls and vases, clocks, passed down from grandparents and beyond, were described as splendid or brilliant as they gleamed on the screen. I was astonished by how the smallest objects, rings, tiny dolls, little 18th century globes, often got the highest amounts. We also shared complete shock at the ridiculous valuations for things like the childish drawings by Lowry. Seriously, we would agree, for that? But he didn't watch much TV anymore. He was too busy and had to be more selective. I couldn't help remembering the hours we used to spend laughing at Carol Burnett and Dean Martin and yelling like maniacs when the Habs scored. Now, when we had the chance, we did watch the playoffs together, but did much less yelling. Like other dynasties, the Canadians ended and things weren't the same. I knew it was cruel, but I couldn't stop myself. I tried to help, but you wouldn't listen. I'm not a doctor, but I did know what I was talking about when it came to hypertension and infarctions. When I was a kid and I had similar interests, he and I had similar interests, I would borrow, essentially steal, his science fiction magazines, pulling issues of amazing stories and fantasy and science fiction out of the old cardboard box he stored them in, and going through each issue from shortest to longest stories, relishing the images they called forth. They inspired my love for astronomy. I even appropriated the telescope he bought and stopped using once his bookkeeping business kept him busier and busier. But eventually I dropped the fiction part, moving in a different direction. My science books and articles for kids started to do okay. I managed to make a few extra dollars with medical journalism, learning a couple of new technical languages that claimed to be English. Meanwhile, Dad kept up his pace. ignoring his age and his expanding gut and his pill-restrained blood pressure and his family history. My other grandfather, Zadie Title, had had only one heart attack, but it was enough. Watching my father go fatter and even more sedentary, his only exercise walking up and down the stairs in our house, I found it hard to believe he played soccer as a boy. He still had a photo to prove it. It was an old country sport played by the sons of immigrants in vacant lots near St. Lawrence. When my elementary school organized a league of sorts, I joined and spent 2 late afternoons per week with kids from various backgrounds kicking a ball around the gym with overturned benches serving as the goals. That league lasted just a few weeks, and our team actually won the championship, though I contributed little to that final victory. That was back when we lived in Côte de Neige. There, I had my own versions of shining treasures. Some were in the jar of buttons my mother had cut off discarded blouses, jackets, and coats. A few looked like jewels or tiny sculptures, and I would play with them as if they were. Mostly, though, my treasures lay on the sidewalks and lawns of Goyer Street. On those late winter afternoons when I came home from soccer or Hebrew school, the blue snow lay like our thick bedspreads on the duplex lawns, sparkling with a billion diamonds. I would slow my walk just to watch the snow glitter under the streetlights, risking a yell from my mother over being late for supper. At 5 o'clock, almost nobody else was out to interfere with the spectacle. A few years after, the star guide my father bought along with the telescope said the Pleiades were supposed to look like diamonds against black velvet when you zoomed in on them. But because of light pollution, they never lived up to that promise or matched what I'd seen on the ground. By then, we'd moved to Ville Saint Laurent with its squared off suburban houses in isolation. I could still walk home from school on most days, but my Hebrew school was back in the Côte de Neige area, at least 2 buses away from what was now supposed to be home. I insisted he drive me to Beth Hamedras on Mackenzie so I could continue to see my old friends. Only later did I understand how much it cost him to interrupt valuable work time to chauffeur me to and from the shoal. So I'll stop there. And now for a slight change of pace. This is the story that will be in Other Covenants, which is an anthology of alternate history stories about Jewish history. And my story is a tartan of many colors. And what I'm going to do is read enough to give you a sense of what it's about, and also to give you the myth that underlies the change from our historical timeline to this one. I'm tempted to do my Scottish accent, but then it sort of breaks down. So I'll just give you a little touches of it. He stood on the seaside cliff, watching his crew unload the ship beneath the snapping gold embroidered sails. The ship rocked in the swells of the glistening North Sea as his men passed the proceeds of their latest trading voyage from vessel to rocky beach. His salt-encrusted woolen kilt hung heavily from his waist. More salt stains streaked his black wool stockings, their checkered calfskin garters, and black leather boots. Behind him came the crunch of small feet on pebble. He unbuckled his scabbard and held it out beside him, where it was taken from his hand by the lad, who struggled to hold it off the ground. He turned landward. As the steady wind fluttered his hair around his face, he scanned the field and trees and hills. Every feature of the landscape called to him. The gloomy forest to the south, broken by stretches of verdant glen. The frost-capped mountains to the west and north, their slopes bulged by screes and creased by corries. The gauzy mist veiling the valleys, the distant blue and white river cutting through the strath, and the waving heather
1366
below his
Avenue.
feet.
Great.
Maybe
All
put
spoke
it
to
in the
his memory,
chat.
all sang songs that echoed in the deepest
That
roots
would
of
be
his
great.
mind.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm gonna
He
put
nodded his
yeah,
head,
just dump
smiling,
all that info
with a
in the
rugged
chat,
voice,
and then
more accustomed to
because I
shouting
like to
orders
check it
than
out
telling
too.
the tales
And
of
did you
his
say
heart.
Kareem?
He spoke to the
Norman?
land and the racing clouds and the rooks that caught in the
Yes,
firs,
Kareem
and to
Samji,
his
it's his
son, who
fragrance shop,
still stood
his
beside him.
emporium.
Home again
But
at
there are 50
last, he
paintings
said, the
hanging in it.
words broken
Oh,
by
I
his
see. So it's not the
satisfaction in
guy
his
who runs the
Highland brogue.
Waterfront
What?
magazine.
I'm a chaya.
Okay. Okay,
There are
that's
Thus,
50
Shlomo
paintings of
McIsaac
yours.
surveyed his
that's
domain,
so cool.
savoring the
Wonderful.
transcendent
That's a lot.
pleasure of
Okay, yeah,
returning
please give us
to
the
the
address.
land of his birth.
Thank you, Norman.
Shlomo was of the Dornoch McIsaacs, a family whose lineage dated back beyond the establishment of the 12 clans to the very origins of the people. Uncle Saul, the clan chief, even claimed, when he'd eaten too much honeyed egg bread, to be a direct descendant of the leader himself. The women could laugh at his sweets-induced folly, but the men worried. If the clan had need of his wits and right arm, was he still capable of leading them into battle? Or would he be incapacitated by the infirmities of age and overindulgence in pastries? Shlomo walked briskly. Oh, by the way, before I continue, I just want to show you, I meant to do this earlier. Yeah, that's the anthology. Okay, sorry about that. Shlomo walked briskly into the village, followed by the 6 men and 1 lad in single file. The side curls on the younger ones swung like rope ends in a storm. As he entered the cluster of huts, the clan gathered around them, shouting their hearty shaloms while the chickens squawked and burbled. His crew were good men, and Chaim, who had been bar mitzvahed only a few months before they left, had done well in support of the expedition. Their trading partners, those barbaric heathens with their leather kippah-like helmets and blonde hair, had frightened Chaim at first. But seeing their unsophisticated weapons and smelling their unwashed bodies and hearing their argle-bargle tongue, he'd soon lost his fear. He'd been astonished by the herds of sheep and goats in the Norsemen's pens, being unused to such ways. "No," Shlomo exclaimed as he neared his hut. "Where's my Ruthala?" And what I will do is just talk about the origins of this bizarre change. Assuming I can find it. Long had the tale been told that had given the Scots their identity as the chosen ones. For the ancient leader arrived upon the shores of the northwestern islands. A fisherman found the holy bairn lying in a basket woven of strange reeds and brought him home to raise as his own, naming him Robert for his shining face. The poor lad had been oddly mutilated and was much pitied for it. But when he grew, he heard the voice of the laird and spoke of the practice as a covenant with God. And so others had followed him, becoming sons of the covenant. In their faith, the covenanters had switched from trousers to kilts to ease the work of the priests with their ritual dirks. The young man then became known among the people as Robert the Briss. And when he reached his prime, Robert climbed to the top of Ben Nevis, stayed for 40 days and 40 nights, and returned with a new name, Moshe Ben Nevis, and a book of laws, the 10 Dinahs, and to tell the people of their true identity as God's own, and of their true ancestry and tongue. And the islands where he had arrived were forever after known as the Scottish Hebrides. Thank you and sorry.
Thank you, Alan. That was great.
Thanks.
I'm just going to, wow, I have a couple of questions, but I love your Montreal stories because I'm from Montreal, and we that's one of the things we share, such palpable details and moments with your father. And your book Telescope that I have is so evocative of your life in Montreal. I can feel it when I read it, your details. And I do have a question, Shlomo McIsaac. And can you please tell me what inspired you to write this story?
Well, I was just having a lot of fun with the parallels between Jews and Scots. And also, when I read other people's work, I tend to think of ways to twist them. And so alternate history is something I haven't been especially interested in over the years, but I thought if I were to do one, how bizarre could I make it? And my first was actually about the Scottish Jews. But I abandoned the story halfway through when I was offered the opportunity to submit to an anthology of Canadian alternate history stories. And so I made Indigenous Canadians Jewish. I had Moses floating that way. But then Mark told me about this anthology about Jewish alternate history stories. And I said, well, why not just go back to the Scottish one, finish that? So now I've got 2 floating Moses stories. With Moses going in 2 opposite directions, north, but northeast versus northwest. And then I just decided through this process of writing the story to incorporate a variety of different themes involving leadership, faith, and all kinds of other issues that would be brought in through this conflict between the Scots and the English, this never-ending conflict between the two.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you for your great reading.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Wow, that was great. So now we're going to begin our second open mic set. Our readers are in this order: Norman Allen, Janice Coleman, and Paul Edward Costa. Okay, so Norman, are you ready?
Right. Full screen. I have an art show. It's next door to the Red Rocket, way down on the Danforth, in Kareem's Emporium, Pennywise Fragrant, 1366, between Greenwood and Coxwell, 50 paintings hanging and 50 drawings there to be viewed. And rather than, I couldn't select a couple of poems, so I'm going to read the intellectual poem. Sorry, people. 3 thoughts in search of the mind. 1. In the weave of the world. This does not explain knowing, but does knowing exist in the possible, watching, willing in the weave of the world as it unfolds, so that we exist in the observing it happen, a quantum phase, forgive me. We watch it happen, watch with will, observing, acting, without us, barren moonscape. In us, cultures, civilizations, academies, wars, rumors of wars, and by God, it is indeed quantum, how it came out of nothing in pixels of energy. Visual fields aren't really just pixels. They're patterned and smudged iterations of something that's happening somewhere sliding down time. So knowing exists possibly in the waves, in the fields of probability, watching, willing in the weave of the world. 2, being is because. Though the possible is an abstraction, what could be, yet everything is in the possible, that's what there is, until it happens. Then it's in stone, dead and gone, out of the possible into the was. 3, process. Stepping into the river end times. Why did the stone go from the possible to was without passing through is, she asked. Because is may just be maybe collapsing into gone. Except in the mind. Remember those visual fields that aren't just pixels, but were iterations of something happening somewhere sliding down time. The neural process is indeed a process, proceeding smeared through times, no stage itself complete, and that's special. So maybe mind is still in the possible, unfolding even while it happens. Visual fields, for example, begin as a page of pixels that can rise through a lateral inhibitory process, so that's 2 iterations of the visual field still in the retina, to domains accessing contrasts. Then on through the optic chiasm, fibers interspersing to project up by the brain, an iteration compounding both eyes. A fourth iteration in the visual field brings linear boundaries, a fifth movement and direction. And how many more before cat sees dog or mouse? All of this sliding down time. And where is the visual world experienced? In the neural maps or electromagnetic fields? And just how long was this phrase in your mind? It's the process, it's the stretch of the process, its depth in time, where root and branch join all phases from possible to was, that's unique in this world, beyond stone, beyond computer, a tangle of activity stretched through a multiplex moment, free from was and may be, floating.
Thank you, Norman. That was great. Of the visual field aren't just pixels, but something happening somewhere, sliding down time, and then everything, the whole. I was writing down the rest of a line, but it was over, so I forgot the rest of it. Thank you. Can I ask you how long is your art show on until?
Till Karim runs out of rent.
Till when? Sorry.
Till Karim, it's sort of on for a long time. It's
Okay.
on, but Karim could only guaranteed to be there from Monday to Saturday, 2 till 5. He's there. And if you want to see the show with me, I'm at 416-928-9272, 928-9272. And give me a call or find me on Facebook or wherever, and I'd be happy to arrange to see it with you.
All right, I might just do that because 2 to 5 is kind of tight. So yeah, that would be great. Okay, so and what is the address of your show again? Danforth, what's the address?
1366, next door to the Red Rocket, a little bit east of Greenwood.
Okay, next I'd like to welcome Janice Coleman.
Hello everyone. At still and always emerging at 74. So, and choosing not to read from memoir in progress, but on a collection just starting about neurodiversity. My eldest daughter, who lives with me, is neurodiverse. And a shout out to Lisa Richter, my magnificent poet, my daughter, who is
I thought I recognized your name because she has posted some pictures of you in your artwork.
Isn't she amazing? She's amazing. All right, so this one is called and I just rescued a puppy at the huge dog park, and so my mind, was abandoned there, and so I've been on and off screen taking care of this new little frightened rescue. So I'm here and not here, so please do excuse. This one is called Shabbat Candles. To my eldest ripe with words, child, she with silver consuming her curls, your words tonight are welcome, a gift. I said as they sifted through the room, seeped into drawers, Ma, you know where my other red sock is, Ma? And something from behind my heart, a tightening, jagged and severe, lassoing tenderness, Ma, she said, I'm having a hot flash, what should I do, Ma? I squinted, could not lift my lids as if the sun were too bright, could not open this child woman prancing with words, mush. It's all mush, slush, and mud, her mouth brimming over with words, Lagoria masticating. What, captive of her words, I say, I need to write, let me, shh. Vowels and egrets beneath ground subspecies spreading her utterances, opaque as dew, dense as fog. It's going to rain all evening, night and day in Starbucks. It's going to rain all week and everyone is vaccinated. Look and see everyone, Ma. This evening, late supper, she asked for Shabbat candles, wine, and matzah ball soup, not dumplings, as she used to insist. And now, what? Is she Jewish? For 2 years, stashed away, her words imprisoned, she emerged from the sanitarium with new meds, missionaries in maroon jackets supplanted outside the chapel. She liked the sky blue stained glass, flat sugared cookies, air streaming sunlight. But when she left, she cried Heil, she did, and slapped, oh. My daughter requesting now Shabbat candles over which she intones, thank you. Thank you for, and in remembrance, her dog passed, also father, and for her mother, and for this house, its walls, its thick walls, safe and strong. So that's one. I don't know if I have time for another or no.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this one is called Neurodiversity. Her rowboat, fawn bark rendered, her rowboat river green, inside pearl gray peeling, wooden oars waiting and keen in metal. Hinges she leans back, oars scattered slapping like a seagull's wings flailing. Please, I say, pull, wetting right to left. But she's left-handed, my daughter. She shakes with her left, presented proudly, but it's her row across the Atlantic. She scopes land where I sight a sea, frame azure and sparkling. Let me wear her glasses, pale pink plastic, magic frames she calls. There's land, ho, palm trees, snow, capped mountains, ho, moon stars, sun side by side. I'm heading straight. She points the boat, pirouetting pitches, then like a hawk moth hovers. Meet out your magic, I say. Let us sail the seas, you and me. And she says, that I can do.
Thank you, Janice. I loved your words. I have words seeped into drawers and something from behind my heart. Child woman prancing with words. There's so much more, but I can't keep up with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome our final open mic reader, Paul Edward Costa, the host of the Art Bar and one of the most energetic people I have ever seen. Welcome, Paul. Can't wait to hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to do two quick poems here, and the first one is a speculative poem called Ethereal Ink Bleeding Through, and it was recently published in Lothlorien Poetry Journal. There was a time when star barons sowed subtle writing through heavens high above any earthbound heads. It was enough in an era that eventually ebbed into new sets of nebulous notations that needed to be plainly spelt out in searing starlight. But still, people down there didn't alter their demeanor. So priests out of space passed through a purple dusk, in gear of gray robes below gyroscope wreaths. They looked all around and found how the humans deleted their sight in an act of blind fear, or what they felt was their only remaining way of resisting an incalculably vast, egotistical will. And the second one is a very, very new one, and this one is called Advertising in a Conformative Advertising in a Conformative Marketing Environment. Maybe they're rebuilt with it. Maybe it's naturally induced empathy affecting Botox, enshrining the muscles behind facial expressions in affable, deferential casts. Replicant facades, out of place like attending firefighter funerals in a Freddy Krueger mask, or standing motionless in the aftermath of a battle amid frantic medical personnel, while only singing a sweet, perfunctory tune, doing nothing but shooting pure uncut caramels, cloying tones towards severed cochlear nerves in an aerated melody that'll never be heard. Thank you so much. So yes, as Jennifer mentioned, I'm current director of the Art Bar Poetry Series, started doing that in April. And we're operating every Tuesday night, now at 7 p.m. and now at Clinton's Bar at 693 Bloor Street West, basically Bloor and Clinton's, and that's the same Clinton's it used to be at, but different management now. And yeah, we have our next event coming up on Tuesday, and I had to have a last-minute replacement who just answered while the reading was going on. So next Tuesday, we are going to have Mary, I should have this memorized already, Mary Lou, what is it? Rowley, Mary Lou Rowley, and we're also going to have Amoya Ray, we have a wonderful kind of slam poet and who's been involved in that world and a speaker and an arts educator, as well as Mary Lou Rowley, who I'll be seeing for the first time. And yeah, it's going to be a good time, and we'll have the 2 features and the open mic after. And yeah, Tuesday night, please check it out there or thereafter. Thank you so much. Oh, also, you have my book available from Mosaic Press. It's called God Damned Avalon. It's a collection of prose poetry and flash fiction. And I'll put some links to there in my social media in the chat if you want to follow along.
You have a launch coming up, right, in August?
Yeah, I'll be part of the Mosaic showcase then. It'll be myself, I forget 2 other people, but yeah, August 25th, there's a Facebook event for that.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I loved your, an era that eventually ebbed into new notations and how the humans deleted their sight. That's a great line. Egotistical will and empathy affecting Botox. So thank you again, Paul. And thank you. Thank you, everybody who read tonight. This was wonderful, beautiful words. And thank you so much for coming out. It's been fun. And if you wanted to stay and chat, you're welcome to, or not, if you want to go and get on with your evening. But lovely to meet many of you who I haven't met before. So great to meet you all. And
Yep.
did anybody else want to share a quick poem?
Okay, Tanya, let's hear from you. I'm looking forward.
Okay, I'm not sure where to send this, to submit this, so maybe you guys can give me some lovely suggestions afterwards. It's called Euromancer. I got this because somebody took the N off Neuromancer, and ideas just started flowing into me. So here we go. You're living in a country that has a world famous carnival every year, yet you won't go because the God of your ancestors' colonizers is more important than celebrating your roots. Or you fawn over the latest rock song from America while mocking the vernacular of your own Caribbean country while waiting for water from the tap in the yard of your partly private high school. Or you've learned in geography class, like everyone else, that your country's 10 degrees north of the equator, yet you say you have to stay out of the sunshine from the schoolyard to maintain your light, half Asian, half white skin. Or you were born in the 40s and adopted an English affecting accent over your Caribbean one to indicate that you are someone intelligent, classy, something better than. Or you will hit your child if they wear dreadlocks, or a nose ring, or smoke weed, or get tattoos. Or you're the living embodiment of the expression, so Christian you don't wear pants. You pay no attention when even your prime minister is reported in a newspaper as warning of the Americanization and the Americophilia of your culture, especially since your country has oil and doesn't rely primarily on tourism from foreigners. Or you spend part of your budget on skin lightening creams, even though the active ingredient has been proven to cause problems. Or you're one of those men who has a thing for white women, or even dates them exclusively. Black women are to this, to that. Or you're another POC, or even white, and find Black women too aggressive. Or you're an American celebrity, quote unquote, because even that term's doubtful when it comes to you. You're fat phobic, xenophobic, generally problematic, and caught on video chat with racists, laughing at their racist jokes, rejecting your Black half, saying you don't want to be Black, but at least you're light-skinned and thick. You've been to Paris, Nice and the Isle of Greece. You've been all over the place, but you've never been to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Tanya. Wow, never been to you. I love that line.
Remember the song? I've been
I've been to
to
Paris.
paradise, but
Yeah.
I've never been to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And your line, wanting to stay out of the sun to maintain your blah, blah, blah skin. Definitely a part of the,
Thanks.
okay.
Olga.
Olga.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is called, it's one poem in a collection that's come together actually over the past 2 years. What else is there to do during a pandemic, right? So I have a collection. This comes from, there are 2 parts. One is called Gods. The other part, the second part is Tales. And the collection as a whole is called Love Songs. This one is how to write poems. It was inspired by Joe Fiorito. He heard me reciting poetry at High Park last summer, and he said encouraging words. So this is dedicated to him. A much admired poet advised me, go deep. Since then, I've been churning away at these words, wondering how to put them to alchemical use, how to make poetry out of mundane stuff. The question is it like sipping the thickest of broths through a straw so that no particle passes untested? Is it like sifting through clothes, years old, piled high, each item fingered, each square probed with straining eyes for stains or loose strands? Is it like wading into the shallow parts of a sea with toes scraping the bottom and every stone and shard made known to me? Or is it like some form of folding, the gaze turned outside in, seeing the scattered and clustered stars and planets near and distant of the blue-black cosmos therein? In that space opened up to my inward eye, I'd grab at the closest floating rock, holding fast, like de Saint-Exupéry's little prince, my legs suspended behind me, lifted up, space sucking my body without carrying me off. I'd hold on to that planetary object, itself kept in place by a string, as if suspended from a ceiling, unseen, or moored to some distant shore. I would float there in that silent place, forging poems from the depths of space. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Olga. That was great.
Thank
I
you.
loved how to make poems out of mundane stuffs and like shifting through clothes and probed with, I can't read my lines now.
It's
Some
okay.
form of folding, the gaze turned outside in. I love
Yes.
those lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ivy, you have another poem for us? Oh, can you unmute
Yes,
yourself?
yes, I do. And I love that too. I don't know if it should be Dr. Olga or Stein.
Oh, just Olga, for heaven's
Okay.
sake.
Stein would be your last name, I think. So yeah, Olga. Okay, I love that. It's always so nice when there's, I think it was Scottish accent. Am I right? Or
Russian,
Irish?
maybe Russian a little bit,
Oh, really? That's interesting.
just a little
Okay.
bit.
It came across as British to me for some reason. All right, so let's see here. I'll do one here. I read this at Art Bar recently. I think I'd only read it once or twice before in public, but I was at Art Bar a lot, and I was also in the last few months. So a lot of you have seen me there. And I'll read it here. It's called Daffodils, Yellow, White, Violent Blue. So it is these dreams I do not speak of openly, the arrhythmia, undulation, overtaking me. I wish not to bring you on these waves that haunt me, yet still you ride with me. You're there and I discern you may have the key. So I ask you to help me stop these feelings that overcome me. Eons have gone by in hyperstates. The burden of bygone days stains me indelibly. If you can, bring me out of this blue, put me into the white light I once tasted and once knew. There was a beckoning existence there where I felt pain's resting place. I am sure this place was somewhere in those daffodils, yellow, white, and blue. Can we go back there? Misgivings aside, my love, I want to be with you. Thanks. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Ivy. I love the lines, pain's resting place, and can we go back there? Is there's some, we want to go back to places. Wow,
Yes, you know what you mean.
that was wonderful. It was really cool to hear all the people on the open mic. And it was just Alan and I thought, wow, it's gonna be fun for us, but I'll get some more people involved, and it's been a great open mic and lovely to hear you all, and so wonderful that you could join us tonight.
Thanks again to Jennifer for organizing this, and thanks to everybody else for coming.